Hey there, welcome to episode 76 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. Today we are going to speak about the idiot box, and hopefully you know what that is. If you don't, maybe you're a millennial or Gen Z person that doesn't watch television anymore, but there was a time and a place, not long nor far away, not long ago nor far away, trying to be tricky, when the family used to gather around the box and watch television, evening television, the evening news, family-friendly entertainment, and so on. It was a thing. Today we're recording this episode on Tuesday, April 22nd at about 4:40 p.m. for publication tomorrow on Wednesday, as usual. So it will be published on the 23rd, but we're recording it on the 22nd. That's how that works. If you're not familiar with the Quaggling Sand audio program, it is a audio essay program, mostly my stories or reflections or commentary, kind of a personal editorial rant sometimes. But I try to keep it fun or interesting or maybe thought-provoking. Maybe you will look back after listening today or during at your own television experiences. How important was television in your life? Hopefully not too important, unless you're an actor or something or a producer. Then maybe it was everything. Quaggling sand, by the way, a technical term I coined when I was very young. I think age 4, 5, somewhere in there. You may call it pins and needles, but it's actually quaggling sand. That sensation when circulation returns to a foot or a hand, maybe an arm or a leg that's been compressed. If you've been laying on your arm or sitting on your foot or something and goes numb. The sensation when circulation returns, officially, legally, quaggling sand. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, a summary that I will read to you, and today's links. I will warn you, starting today, there are now 4 shameless self-promotion links. There were 3. There used to be only 2. Inflation. And 1 link to an old HBO series that's strangely apropos. It's actually a Wikipedia page for that series, which is long gone. So let's get started. The sooner we get started, the sooner we finish. Broadcast television, so often consumed via the so-called idiot box, was for quite some time a substantial driver of U.S. culture. We all watched the same things at the same time, thrown off a bit by cable, the VCR, and eventually time-shifted viewing in general. Barely even watching broadcast television anymore, if I might add that in. What a ride. What a ride it has been. The links for today's episode, as usual, buymeacoffee.com/danhugo, a personal profile page there with links to my various audio programs, projects, a little biographical information, a couple of affiliate links for coffee beans. You're under no obligation to spend any money on any of these, by the way. If you visit the posts section, buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. It is linked at the top of my profile page, my 1-page link tree and more profile. At the very beginning, posts, you will find the Buy Me an Update published on Mondays. 5 minutes or less, a quick rundown on the previous week's audio programs and any announcements, upcoming this, that, and or the other thing. Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com. The hyphen is the dash, maybe the dash or the hyphen next to the 0 key on your keyboard. Ko-fi.com/danhugo, textual and other alternative updates similar to Buy Me a Coffee, but then not a funky spelling. Probably pronounced coffee, but I say Ko-fi just to underscore the unusual spelling. Guess what? They also host audio if you agree to a revenue sharing program, 5%. But if you don't spend any money, that's still 5% of 0. That's fine. The Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/danhugo, DANHUGO. I spell my name right and correctly sometimes. Ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts, POSTS, just like buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. You will find Coffee Solo kind of sounds like Cafe Solo, but too many F's in one of my programs, so I want to keep it to a minimum. Coffee Solo is it's a free form, and I'm going to not script it. I'm not going to write ahead of time And I'm going to try to do multiple episodes per week. So the numbering, the episode naming and numbering is different. Call it a run-up to the Hugo Floss program, which will also not have a particular schedule. So you can check out posts and listen in on the Coffee Solo program published on ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts. Check it out. Finally, Dream On was an HBO series. It was on in the early 90s, mid 90s. I think it was 6 seasons or maybe 5. Brian Benben and others. Brian Benben, the star, lived his life with non sequitur memory references to old black and white television shows from his youth. So somewhat apropos, he would, the writers, the producers of the show would insert sometimes relevant, sometimes insightful, other times humorous, maybe all three clips of old television shows as he lived his life in a humorous way. Brian Benben, I enjoyed him more in I Come in Peace, which was an interesting movie. Good times. Dolph Lundgren, Brian Benben, quite a pair. So let's get started. The sooner we begin, the sooner we end. So first there was PBS, the Public Broadcasting System. Early on, I became a fan of Sesame Street Electric Company, Villa Alegra. That means Happy Village in Spanish. And probably some other educational programs on PBS back then. Who knows? I don't remember what they were, but I do remember those in particular. Electric Company with Hey You Guys, and Sesame Street, of course, with a cast of puppets and humans. Leading me to learn how to count to 20 in Spanish, Sesame Street did, and to become generally interested in the goings-on with Mr. Looper and Gordon and Maria and the others. My mom took me to see a taping of Sesame Street, in fact, at Channel 13 in New York, somewhere, wherever Channel 13 was. And we did get to go down onto the set after they recorded a show. I think it was after. It might have been before, but I think probably after. Where I saw Big Bird running around in just the legs. So the costume itself was somewhere else. So some guy with Big Bird feet and legs. I remember him sitting on a table. We saw him sitting on a table from up in the observation booth, watching the production unfold. And of course, I will admit, I just learned this. Aloysius Snuffleupagus. Who knew he had a first name? Mr. Snuffleupagus, the elephant-like, the Macedonian, hanging from the ceiling, in this case, for storage. Don't worry, it was nothing untoward. It was interesting to see how these things were made, of course. I was probably 5. I think I was 5. We moved away from New Jersey when I was about 6, coming up on 7. So it was like April, May, when I was 6 years old. Coming up on the end of the school year, about to turn 7. So somewhere in there, we went, and at some point I did know how to get to Sesame Street. PBS remained for many years in my go-to collection with everything from 321 Contact to Zoom to Nova and many other documentaries, educational content, interesting stuff, this, that, more. I'm sure it was good for many years, but has probably suffered over the more recent years from political angst over funding, concerns about politicization, I think is the way to pronounce that word. You know, which content is what, and possibly overly liberal content, and who knows for sure. I like the educational stuff, the politics, whatever. And of course, PBS is now competing with other online sources. I don't know if PBS is online as well. To be honest, I really haven't kept up. But it was good back then, and I'm glad PBS was around for me. Saturday morning cartoons became a real thing. There was a time when I would wake up Saturday morning and ask at least one adult in the house. Could be a parent, my grandmother, if I was staying at her house, whoever else was around, if I could watch TV. I don't know how early it was. It was probably 7, 8, 9, who knows? Who knows for sure? Whenever Saturday morning cartoons began. I do remember occasionally waiting for some sort of a sign-on or for programming to begin, so I guess it was pretty early. Eventually it became clear that the answer was going to be a sleepy yes. So why bother waking people up for my own habits? So I would just go watch TV. Evolution. I really liked the Saturday lineup. Though today I could not tell you in great detail what they were, specific episodes of this or that. I do recall the Laugh Olympics as being sort of humorous. I tried looking up, so the Laugh Olympics would take crossover characters from different cartoon shows, and they would do things, Olympic style things. So it was basically the mixing together of all these characters, and the different TV networks used to do this with their daytime TV stars. I don't know, I don't know if it was called the Morning Olympics, Celebrity Olympics. I don't know what it was, but impossible to find. All you're going to find now is NBC Olympic coverage. So I gave up looking, but we would watch the network star Olympics, which were silly. And the Laugh Olympics to me was like the kid version with cartoons. There was some English dubbed anime style stuff, like some sort of an aircraft with other vehicles attached to it in the wingtips, in the tail. It could land and take off vertically, and it would be deployed to fight crime, and all of its various vehicles would spring into action, and then they'd rejoin in the air, perhaps. Who knows? They would track down, fight crime, and fight villains, or whatever. There were some classic Merry Melodies, of course, Bugs Bunny, Foghorn Leghorn, the whole crew, and the list goes on. Perhaps this was implanting some old school culture for my future, but it was probably really time that could have been spent doing other things like reading books, which I did know how to do. Looking back, though, I think maybe having some classic Bugs Bunny and some of the others, but mostly the Bugs Bunny stuff in this case. There may have been other things, but certainly classic Bugs Bunny, not a minority of the things that I watched on Saturday mornings are probably worthwhile in any way, but the classic Bugs Bunny is interesting to have around because a lot of that stuff faded away. It was taken off the menu. It's variously offensive or not modern, not keeping with just good taste, perhaps. Even Dr. Seuss got a bad rap, and that's how I learned how to read initially. So anything that was born of the 50s, the 40s and the 50s, and even the 60s probably doesn't age well. So some of the Bugs Bunny stuff was in there, but I think I probably heard a lot of Mel Blanc, so that's probably worth something. I have these stored away for my own edification, perhaps. Eventually we got cable, and cable meant HBO. Crazy back then when it was just getting started. We were still in New Jersey, and sometime in 1975, I think it was November, may have been sooner, I found evidence that HBO may have started in 1972, but I think it actually rolled out as HBO in 1975. I can't remember exactly when. It might have been November. Who knows? But it's when HBO became a real channel on cable. We had our first cable TV box with a cable-connected channel changer, so that a long brown wire to a little brown box with buttons, one for each channel. So no digital here. You would kind of like a station changer buttons on the classic AM radio back way back in the day in your car. You don't have to know what I'm talking about, but you would push one button and another button that had been pressed earlier would pop out. So the button you pressed would remain pressed, and that would be the channel selection. So you would select channel 2 or 15 or whatever, and you'd pick the channel, and there it was. The remote control was not exactly remote, but that was progress. It was the old days. What are you going to do? We had I think it was RCA, but it may have just been a no name brand, but it may have been RCA. Fairly large television for the time. Maybe it wasn't RCA, who knows? But it was in the basement with the channel box, and we had the HBO for some time when they were broadcasting in those very early days. It was pre 24/7 days, so HBO actually had a sign off. And if you search for HBO bumper music and sign-off music and whatnot from the 70s, you can find it. It's horrible. I was almost going to clip it, but it's literally like, painful. If you got to listen to me, you don't want to add to the misery. So there was an occasional movie, though, I assume. The only thing I really remember was It's Alive, which is a B horror movie. A baby is born as a demon of some sort, and it kills people. And I remember the commercial was like a bassinet with a black background, and they were kind of turning around, like the bassinet was rotating. And most people are excited to have a new baby or have a child born or something, but this This family is terrified because it's alive. Something like that, their tagline, marketing. I remember that. I didn't see the movie. I was a little young. But I don't really remember getting into HBO. We used to watch TV, but I don't remember being into HBO. I think they only broadcast in the evenings to be family friendly. Our big thing was having the TV in the basement, though. This was in New Jersey, so we had a basement. It was essentially our toy room, laundry room, boiler room, work room. There were actually multiple rooms. And so we had the room off the stairs. It's a big space. We had an old couch, random toys, Legos, Tinker Toys, all kinds of stuff, really. We couldn't make too much noise. There was no worrying about making too much noise since we were down below the home, and nothing to worry about. So long as we could make it down the stairs without falling, and this was mostly the case. Eventually, it was all about soap operas, game shows, and long, hot summers. During the day when I was younger, during the day, why did I type that twice? That's weird. But during the day, if we were homesick or hanging out on a hot summer day when we were living in Phoenix, or generally to kill time at any time, it was soap operas, game shows, and one way to waste a summer or two. Actually, two ways, I guess there was something to be said, at least for the familiar, with All My Children and General Hospital. We have those now in our memories. There were several popular soap operas at the time, and there were nighttime soap operas like Dallas and Knots Landing and who knows what else. Though I can also say that if I knew nothing of either of these, I don't know that I would be worse off. It is what it is. Knowing how these hastily crafted daily serials were produced is sort of an interesting thing, though, and it is sort of pop culture. If you don't know what a soap opera is, you wouldn't know any soap opera related humor. There were movies that came out. There was a comedy show called Soap that was sort of a parody of soap operas, sort of. Billy Crystal and others. And having that pop culture familiarity is probably mildly good for the old days. I remember the old days. Only mildly, though. Only mildly important and useful. Game shows, though, these might actually have been valuable. Now, the productions were a bit odd. Some of these games were a little bit goofy. But knowing the nature of The Price is Right, for example, those goofy long microphones, the Showcase Showdown, Bob Barker, and his quest for spaying and neutering of pets, the behind-the-scenes drama that you could learn about many years later, prices of consumer goods, the silly games that they would play, and so on. Those of us that were home at the time, watched the actual Press Your Luck controversy. I think somebody's making a movie about this. It was a game show where the contestant had memorized the pattern of the prizes and whammies. So there was there was a rectangle of squares, and I think they would project the image of the player in the middle of it. So while I was filling the screen, there'd be a rectangle, and then the squares were a lighted border would light up around one of the squares, and then the lighted border would bounce around pseudo-randomly on the rectangle. You can look up Press Your Luck if you want more information about that. But we watched this show every day. It was a cliffhanger. It was a nail biter. So this contestant was hitting dollar amounts instead of the whammies. The whammies, you would end your turn and you'd lose all your money. You could stay or you could keep going. The contestants would say, no whammies, big money, no whammies, I think it was. So we watched him as he just kept winning and winning and winning. And it turns out he had memorized the pattern. There were only a few patterns, pseudo-random, and that was it. So he won a ton of money. At the time, it was a ton of money. Today, you'd probably say, eh. But in adjusted dollars, even probably not bad. not enough to cover your tariffs. But so yeah, the Press Your Luck saw that live. That's one of those little historical things. And I think somebody's making a movie about it or something. It's a pop culture reference. It was drama and excitement the whole week. Who didn't enjoy Wink Martindale on Tic-Tac-Doe? And he actually just passed away on April 15th. He was 92 years old. Chuck Woolery, 2 and 2. He was on a few game shows and the dating game, but he was on Tic-Tac-Toe for a while, and Scrabble and a few others. He got a little weird later in life. Bob Eubanks, the Newlywed Game, even Dick Clark and the Pyramid. If these aren't high value memories, what is really, when you think about it? But some of those are kind of funny. I don't know if game shows are even still around at all, but I would put game shows as slightly more valuable than soap operas, but I got them all. Obviously, PBS was a big influence, those early shows, and then again, Nova. Nova was a really good one. And yeah, just some good stuff. And I haven't watched PBS in forever. Unless they publish something to YouTube, I've probably caught it there. I essentially don't even have access to broadcast over-the-air television. I don't have an antenna. I don't consume it. So if they publish it to online places, I can watch some stuff. Our local TV news, for example, here in Vegas, I'm sure they have television broadcasting, but I just catch a video clip of this or that online on their websites or on YouTube or wherever. So that's the nature of that. So I basically don't consume PBS specifically anymore. So I couldn't even tell you if it's good. I know it used to be. Definitely an influence in the early years. There are some direct connections that I can make from memory and from influence on my interests in technology and future, this and that. Arc 2 was a very weird futuristic show on Saturday morning. Space Academy, Jason of Star Command. Those were Saturday morning shows that were cheap. The production value was not great, but as a kid, who knew? So you're looking at people on a space station and Jason of Star Command saving the day with his little spaceship. And the Arc 2 was like an RV with a radar dish and a talking chimpanzee. How can you go wrong? Space 1999 was huge. To this day, you can watch both seasons of Space 99 on various, you can watch them on YouTube probably and other streaming channels. Space 1999 was a trip. And if you read or listen to or watch or whatever, the backstory of the production, the making of, total chaos. Space 1999. So these future-looking tech shows, planting some of the early seeds of nerdalism, to be sure. Then, of course, this was easy. Star Trek, it's obvious. There are whole documentaries that have been created around the influence Star Trek had on more than one generation of technologists and even philosophers. I refer to Star Trek isms now and then, just in general. It's tricky you remember that one Star Trek episode? Right away, you get branded like, hey, that's a TV show. It's rad. But from an illustrative standpoint, you can say, look, here was the plot line. Here's how it unfolded, to try to illustrate a point. You have to be careful who your crowd is, who your audience is that you're speaking to. But Star Trek, the original series, the Next Generation, I never really got into Deep Space Nine or Voyager, but Star Trek, certainly the original series, highly influential to the generation at the time, the younger generation that has since grown up, and then probably with the movies extending the viability of the original series and the original characters. Maybe another generation came out of that, but I don't know if you heard my phone there, some notifications. But yeah, Star Trek, hugely influential. If people that are in my line of work, in my age group, or maybe one generation older, maybe one or two younger, if you were going to say what television show was most influential getting you into your sort of tech career path, you're going to get Star Trek half the time. And it's going to be in the top 3, probably 100% of the time. And those are totally random guesses, but who knows? The Whiz Kids was the first time I recall seeing a kid with a computerized room that would talk to him. He would go into his room and he had multiple computers on racks and who knows what else was going on there. And his friends basically grouped around him and his nerdy abilities, and they used those nerdy abilities to solve crimes, of course. As we all know, people with that much computing power commit crimes. They do not solve them. Magnum P.I. and Simon & Simon, the CBS doublet, I think they were on Thursday nights, both introduced me to lockpicking. After watching those 3 people, Rick and AJ, Simon, and of course Thomas Magnum, whipping out a lockpick and picking open locks like it was nothing, motivated me to get some lockpicks. And it turns out it's not much more difficult than they showed. Kind of frightening, actually. Why bother locking anything? But yeah, that one was easy. That was a huge influence I think I was I like a sophomore in high school maybe by the time I actually got my first set of lockpicks? And I can reach for one set of lockpicks right now while I'm recording this. And there's another set maybe 5 feet away from me that's much larger with many more picks. So lingering impact. And then there were other series like MASH, Barney Miller, Cheers, The Cosby Show, tons of them they were sometimes smart, sometimes thought-provoking, sometimes humorous, sometimes none of those things. Not all of them hold up so well today. It is what it is. But the times were what they were. And of course, the mindless stuff. Obviously, daytime television was a waste of time. Maybe it still is. And while it lingers on today, soap operas and game shows are a shadow of their former glory. I think today, if I was getting hooked on game shows, I would probably have a bigger problem. I don't even know if there are game shows, but they've kind of been done, right? So if you're watching game shows and soap operas today, why just watch the news? The news and anything on YouTube. Now YouTubers fight with each other enough. That is a soap opera. It's perhaps arguable that some game shows were useful, as I kind of alluded to. There was some trivia. There was occasionally some logical reasoning. You had to know what prices of things were on the old Price is Right. But a lot of television in the 80s was like Love Boat, Fantasy Island, all sorts of random ridiculousness. It was well deserving of the name for the box in which they were delivered. See title of episode. But as I mentioned in the introduction, the summary of today's episode, the take home from all these memories, if you are in a certain age range, you remember these. You remember we had 3 network channels, network television channels. We had a local station or 2, PBS, and that was about it. Cable brought new possibilities and better reception. VCRs, TiVo brought time shifting. Of course, there were many years between those two things. I used to record David Letterman so I could go to sleep. I would wake up at 4 a.m. I would watch the previous evening's David Letterman, Late Night with David Letterman show while I did my homework and ate breakfast, and then catch the bus at 6:30 in the morning to get to school. It's a city bus, public transit. So I had my VCR-laden school day, getting started earlier with the likes of David Letterman. Good stuff. I always liked Dave. So should you. Then there was DirecTV after cable. So now you could get signal anywhere where you could face, I think it was Southern Exposure. And now everything from TikTok to YouTube to any of how many streaming channels, bring anything you want anytime. And that, if you remember the Quest commercials, QWEST, they were going to run fiber to your home and you were going to be able to watch every movie ever made anywhere, anytime, from any language on any planet. So that promise is essentially here. It has been for years, and there's only more crap. And someone somewhere is saving all of this stuff on however many hard drives. So total chaos. While trending content is what drives profitability for any given platform, it's why TikTok is so important. It's really a dopamine rush now. You're either part of a trending thing, or you are the trending thing, or you're part of it, or whatever. But it's you're in the in crowd, and the in crowd moves around as quickly as somebody can type a hashtag or create a dumb video. Often the trend isn't so much about a single video, though that still happens, but it could be a style of video. So like a challenge, some of them are dangerous, or a dance, some dance move, or some musical thing, or some scene transitions. Those are popular. Some other goofy thing. And these last until the next one. Does anyone remember a TikTok video like they remember the no whammies guy on Press Your Luck, or the Reagan-Mondale debate with the age joke? I refuse to let my opponent's age and lack of experience become an issue in this campaign. I think that was the quote. I'm just going from memory. And Mondale laughs, and Reagan basically pulls it out. He's like, he is funny. So, yeah, Reagan-Mondale. What about the V series? There was an actual with Jane Badler as the Diana, the evil alien queen / captain of the invasion force. Someone on that show ate a rat on television at night, but it looked like they ate a rat. I don't know if they actually ate the rat, but they had this jaw animation, like a reptilian jaw that was swung out to fit a whole rat in their mouth. Oh, that's crazy. And then you could go to school the next day and you could talk about how, did you see that dude eat the rat? I think it was actually Jane Badler, but I think somebody else ate a rat in a different episode or whatever it was. So you would have these common TV shows, you'd have common events, you'd have common coverage of those events. You could have the whammy guy. You're like, oh, did you see the no whammies thing last night or yesterday? That could be a water cooler topic, as they say. So but we don't really have that anymore. We don't have these comics. And in fact, binge television watching has been blamed for some of the breakdown of these cultural connections. Because now you can watch a whole TV series in a weekend. Like they launch a new series. Maybe you're what was it? Was it The Expanse that would come out when Amazon bought it? They would just launch the entire series all at once. You could binge watch it over the weekend and you're done. So now you're not watching it every Thursday night like they used to with Cheers and Friends and all that. I know Amazon started doing Reacher, for example. Season 3 just finished. They would do a new episode. I think it was on Thursdays. So they've kind of learned their lesson, and now they roll out a new episode or 2 episodes every week. Kind of slows down the consumption, and it gives people a time to appreciate. There's no spoilers to worry about so much. So you can be a part of the conversation. I actually wonder if opening up the floodgates has not only made for worse and more divisive, misleading, even dangerous content. Some of those TikTok challenges are ridiculous, although that's how Darwin works. To go everywhere all the time. You can get this crap anywhere on any device, anywhere on the planet at this point. But it's also removed that common experience that, though limited and sometimes puritanical, was sort of unifying, a little bit memorable and now and then worthwhile, but also a thing of the past. So kind of interesting. I cannot say precisely if television was on balance a good or bad thing. Like, should I have watched less TV? Probably. That's almost always a good idea, is to watch less TV, go outside, talk to humans. But I don't think it was detrimental. I did watch a lot of TV, kind of like Dream On. If you ever watch that show or are able to catch it, kind of a weird premise for a show, but in general, it was good. In college, for example, one of my roommates, Kevin, had a similar memory, so we would make references to movies or TV shows through the day. So that was kind of fun. So having those common experiences was and might still be useful, but now there are so many possibilities, so much junk streaming. I was going to say streaming on so many different platforms. You got to be in the cool crowd. You got to be watching the right, like, oh, did you see this and that on on which? Oh, it's a new app from Estonia. The algorithm is better than, like, there's too much silliness. I think algorithms are actually part of the problem, but what do I know? But anyway, yeah, the idiot box, that was certainly an important thing for a long time. I haven't watched, I think when I was living in Silicon Valley the second time, probably 2007, 2006, I had a TiVo the first time. I actually worked at Philips when Philips was manufacturing TiVos. So I had a TiVo first generation device. I would later get a DirecTV box with a TiVo built in, had to have the DirecTV. And essentially I committed, it was somewhere around 2007, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. I committed to the notion that I am not going to watch scheduled television anymore. So I'm only going to watch it if I've recorded it on the DirecTV TiVo, or I will watch it streaming. And this was before YouTube was around or before it became popular. But if there was something I could watch, download or consume in that way, I mean, you could download movies around this time. So if I could download it, or I could watch it off schedule, time shifted, as they say. So but I was never going to commit myself to a schedule that was set by a television channel or a television show. And I haven't gotten back from that since. So I essentially don't watch live television anymore. I don't want, unless it's some live news coverage on a streaming channel or something. But I stopped. What does that make it? 23 years? No, 17 years ago. 2007 to now. So 10, 20, 15, 17, 18 years ago, something like that. So yeah, a long time ago. But before that, I was also kind of trending Aside from watching 9/11 coverage on TV, that was, of course, a big unifying event. But after that, not much. Stopped really paying attention to live events. When I moved back, so I was in Phoenix when that happened. I moved back to Silicon Valley, essentially gave up on, well, also because when I moved back to Silicon Valley, I was on the road all the time on the tracks. I had to get up to the city to work at Salon when I first moved back there in 2005. So between 2005 and then whatever it was, 2007, let's see, 2005. Yeah, let's call it 2007. So in those 2 years, in the first year, I was on the train all the time, so I didn't really have time to watch television. And then in the intervening year or so, I was getting out and about into the city of Sunnyvale and getting more involved in goings on. So I really didn't watch TV. So yeah, it shifted completely to time shifted television and never looked back. And that has only become more of reality for everybody. Who gets home to watch an evening news channel anymore? Who knows? But that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully, whenever you listen to this, it's at the time and place of your choosing. I certainly don't go too crazy to publish at a fixed time each week, and nor should you go too crazy trying to set your watch by me. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And do check out my various programs that you can find on Buy Me a Coffee, on Ko-fi. You can follow links to other programs, and Hugo Floss will be launching in earnest. Episode 0 went up. It was audio only, but we're going to do something more interesting than that. And that is that. Have a good week. Have a good month. Hopefully, cross our fingers, we have a good year. Bye-bye.